A sticky summer's day in Shepherdstown. An eagle in a thermal is a circling round like a tire on a bike rolling down Columbus Street. But Katie got a little look of hope in her eyes, and her arms unfolded as she looked to the skies and said, I'm gonna learn to fly around with you, yeah. She jumped up high and she fell on the ground and skinned her little knee and made a horrible sound. She got right up and she tried it again, and smiling all the way with her unstoppable grin.
Well, hello everybody. Long time no see. It has been 7.5 months, probably close to 8 months since I've podcasted. I've had a very special person keeping me away from everybody. And this is him. This is Caleb Benjamin Shaw. He was born September 18th, 2015, 9:53 p.m. 8 pounds, 8 ounces, 21¼ inches long. And we had quite the arrival story. Right? Yeah. We are teething. We're waiting for our first tooth to come in. So, I'm actually going to distract him with little baby Einstein. He loves baby Einstein. For those of you that have, this will be your disclaimer. His arrival was very scary. So if you have any issues with that, you may want to skip the birth story. So you've been warned. We have a fantastic team here at Penn Bay, which is our medical system. It was, about a week after I podcasted last time. I've been having Braxton Hicks the entire week. Then we, oops, hold on, turn my noises off. Because with my luck, Heather will text bomb me from MDSW. Maryland Jeeping Wool. So, I've been having Braxton Hicks all week. I was big as a house. That's how I felt anyway. I actually felt okay. Besides all the rib pain that I talked about last time, I had a very good pregnancy. Was hoping for as natural birth as possible. Again, as I said, warning, it was far from that. The morning of the 18th, he was due on the 19th, which was a Saturday. So Friday was my husband, Mahani's, last day of work. He took 6 weeks paternity leave starting on his due date. And he had flown up for the week. It was gorgeous weather the week that he was born. Beautiful, wonderful summer week. So he had flown our little plane up to work that week. So that morning, I was having some pretty consistent Braxton Hicks. Consistent that they were coming, but they weren't any good time frame. So they say, they can be really steady and then they can be kind of, all over the place. Mine were kind of chaotic. They were all over, but they were stronger than they were before. So I'm like, okay. So I went through the day. I told my husband that I had been having a lot of Braxton Hicks. Got to be about 11. I called the doctor, called the on-call. It was actually a midwife that was on call. And I talked to her, and she was my less than favorite midwife that I had experienced. There was only one midwife that I really liked. I don't know. That's just how it worked out for me. This one had been very rude to my husband's, and you spit up. Maybe not. She was not my favorite. So, are you alright? Yeah. He's got a lot of cameras and phones in his face, so he's just checking it out like, oh, it's just another camera. Yeah. You think so? So I called her and asked her about the Braxton Hicks, and she said it could turn into full labor. It may not. It may be a false alarm. If they get to be more consistent, closer to 5 minutes apart, give us a call back. So, yeah. Who's that? You say hi to everybody. Are you making your debut? You making your debut out of utero? I think you are. Yeah. So, I started timing them. They're about 8 minutes apart. They were consistent, but they didn't get any closer together. So, I told my husband that, I'd called the doctor and had talked to... What are you doing? Yeah? You say hi to everybody? It's like, no, Mom, I'm watching the toys on Baby Einstein. Right? I should have put it, I should be facing the other way, right? So he got done with work at 4, and he said, I'm on my way. About 2:30 I'd got in the tub. We have a big garden tub, so I'd been breathing through I was pretty sure they were contractions at that point. I was timing them. They were about 6.5 minutes. Like, okay, it's about an hour for my husband to fly down. You know, he'll be home about 5 o'clock. So basically, the second that he texted me that he was done, my contractions went to 4.5 minutes, and they took my breath away. I was like, oh boy. Because they say at 5 you should go to the hospital. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got an hour. So I wait like 20 minutes, and I text him. I say, how you doing? He goes, oh, I've got a terrible headwind. My ground speed's terrible. Probably going to be close to 6:30. I'm like, oh, of all days to have a headwind and for it to take longer for you to get home. So he came pedaling home. I threw out that whole thing, loaded the car. The only thing I really had left to pack was like my husband's shorts that he sleeps in and some of his favorite shirts. Like we didn't want to pack that stuff up ahead of time. But I had a nice little list. I had everything else packed. My essential oils. I had a playlist on my phone. I was ready. Like, I was ready. And so I had my little list. So I grabbed our chargers, grabbed his, couple favorite shirts. We only lived 15 minutes away, but I knew he wasn't going to want to be gone at all, unless he had to be. So he was on his way. I load the cars in between contractions. But the contractions are 4.5 minutes long, but like a minute and a half of that is contraction. So I've only got like 2.5 minutes in between contractions to get the car loaded, right? Yeah. Here, you want you in the remote? Like, no, I'll just watch. So, this usually works about once a day to have him watch the line signs, and he's watched it once already today, so I don't know how long it'll keep his attention. Usually it's like morning chicken chores. He watches Little Einstein so I can run outside quick. Because it's been pretty cold to take him outside that early in the morning. So we'll see. He's a little distracted. So I got the car loaded. I was texting him the whole time. So I fed the cats. Got the house ready to go. Jumped in the car when he said he was close. Drove to the airport, which is only about a half mile away. Opened the hangar door. Pulled his truck out of the hangar. Watched him land. Amongst all that loading, I'd called the midwife back and told her what was going on. And she goes, well, why don't you come in? We'll put you on the monitor and, see if you're in some active labor. And I told her, if this isn't active labor, I'm in trouble because this hurts. I mean, it didn't hurt, but it was not comfortable. It was very uncomfortable at that point. So, I got to go ahead to go to the hospital. So I met him at the airport. I watched him land. I waved at him, followed him to the hangar. So he doesn't know that it's progressed because I want him to focus on flying. I didn't want him to be panicked about me. So I didn't tell him that the contractions had kicked up once he took off. So he lands and I'm like mid-contraction. He's like, hey, my honey. And I'm like, hospital, we need to go. He's like, what? I'm like, let's go. No chit-chat. We gotta go. So I'm like, but I can't really talk because the contractions hurt. So I'm like, hospital. Like, I'm trying to breathe, and he's like, completely like, almost eats it jumping off the airplane, like he's in a hurry. He goes, do I have time to go home? Like, do I have time to change? I'm like, you have time to change. So I said, grab all your stuff, grab all your gear, throw it all in your truck. He's like, we can leave it. I'm like, no, just grab it now because you're not going to want to come back later. So he threw everything in his truck. He pushed the plane in, gave me a kiss. We jumped in our cars, drove home. He went and changed clothes real quick. And then, what do you want? Yeah. Look at the video. Are you going to tell them about it? Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. Was it crazy? Was it crazy? You were just in there, just waiting to come out. So we came home and changed, took off for the hospital. We got there about 6:45. It's about 15 minutes. I think we got there in about 12. He wasn't driving crazy, but we hit really good. We hit the lights and we hit the traffic and yeah. So we made good time. Got there. Got checked in. 6:45. Yep. So I got in the hospital gown. Got all my stuff settled. Put me on the monitor. Then they put me on a portable monitor so I could walk around and move around, and contractions were getting harder and harder and harder, and pretty soon they said, I was doing a lot of standing and leaning on Jeremy during contractions, and I don't know what time it was, but they said, hey, can we put you on the regular monitor? Like, one of those isn't sensing very well. Turns out they were worried about Caleb. But I didn't know that. They didn't want to tell me that they were worried. They just wanted to get a better read on what was going on with him. So, do you want your giraffe? You want Raffy? Do you want this? I'm trying to see how long I can distract him so I can talk to you. Do you want a hair comb, I guess? Not the other end. So they put me on there, and about 8 o'clock, 8:30, my water broke. That's a very gross feeling. I was like, oh, something's going on down there, and I was just hoping that it was my water breaking and not like hemorrhaging or something like that. So they're like, nope, it's your water broke, and turns out there was meconium. I always say that word wrong. He had pooped in utero. He had pooped before he was born. So we were dealing with that. That makes him a little more high risk. I was dilated to 5 at that point. And whoa, my water broke about 8:30, and he had pooped in utero, which is a infection and an issue for his lungs, possibly if he would inhale that into his lungs. He's over here, so you're gonna hear some background noise. So after that happened, my contractions kicked up a notch, and at that point I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna do this. Like, I'm already miserable. I'm already having a hard time controlling my breathing. I want an epidural. So I told Jeremy, and he said, I don't think you're going to have a choice. I'm like, what do you mean? And the midwife came in and said, the baby's in some distress. So here's your trigger warning for the rest of the story. Baby's in some distress. Dr. Mellon's in a C-section right now. I think we're going to have to do a C-section. I think we're going to be able to wait. So we joked as we're on our way to the hospital that, you know, I'm in labor at 6:45 at night. Good chance he'll be born on his due date. We're so close. Missed it by a couple hours. I said, okay. At that point, I was just trying to breathe, but I didn't quite realize the level of distress he was under. They call it, I believe it's called a late deceleration. If I understand it right, usually the baby's heart rate mimics the contractions. So like, as the contraction gets worse, baby's heartbeat goes up, and then it goes down and up and down. Well, apparently his was spiking up really, really high. And there's certain, like, distances apart, you know, like, if it spikes to 160, the bottom will be 135. But his was spiking up to, like, 180, 185, and bottoming out in the 130s. So that spread was too far apart. And he wasn't, you know, waving. He was spiking, and then he would drop way down. So he was not tolerating, his body was not tolerating the labor at all. So they didn't want to wait with the meconium situation and with the stress. They didn't want to wait. I didn't know all this. I don't want to even say blissfully. I'm blissfully unaware. Jeremy understands what's going on. I should have known when there was 5 nurses studying my paper, the paper that comes out on the machine. But I didn't. They kept me in the dark because I was breathing and I was as calm as I could be in that situation. So a few times the alarm went off on the machine, but we'd had a power surge. So Jeremy's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's just the machine resetting," and blah blah blah. I didn't realize that those were actually alarms that his heart rate was too low. So they said we're gonna do, and this is a little. Not incredibly graphic, but a little bit. So if you're squeamish or whatever, you may want to skip ahead a couple minutes. They wanted to do my catheter. They do catheter when you do a C-section, and I said, do we have to do that now? Like, can't you do that after the epidural? Because they're going to do an epidural to C-section. And they said, well, with him already in a C-section, we don't want to waste any time. You know, we want to get it done now, so when you get down there, you can just, you know, go right in. Well, pretty soon he came in a whirl. Dr. Mellon was my surgeon. He's one of the 3 doctors. My doctor was McKenna, and Mellon's one of the other doctors in the office. So he came in and he said, all right, he goes, we're in a hurry. We're going to do this. We're going to cut you here to here. We're going to do this. That he, like, went through the entire thing in about 30 seconds and said, sign this piece of paper, and date and time is 9/18 or something like that. So they, I signed it. The catheter was terrible. Sorry, hold on. The catheter was pretty awful. It wasn't so much that the catheter going in, it was I don't know, just the whole process before they put it in. I was not a fan. Not a fan. If I don't have to do that again and feel it, I'll be perfectly happy. Plus, I was also battling pretty terrible contractions in the midst of this, so I had a hard time holding still, which did not help things. So, anyway, they got the catheter in, I transitioned to the bed. Like, they're trying to hurry me, but they're trying not to get me panicked, because I'm calm. So they get me in the bed, make pretty good time, down to the operating room, if I remember correctly. We get to the door, and they stop my husband at the door. I didn't realize this. And I turned around to look for him. I'm on the gurney, so I'm looking around. I'm like, where's my husband? And they're like, oh, he can't be in here. I'm like, no, he has to be in here. I want him in here. And they're like, no, we have to put you under. When I heard that, I knew something was wrong. Because if they put you under, it's a pretty serious situation. They don't want to take the 30 to 40 minutes to give you an epidural. At that point, I panicked. Started crying. Oh, I'm going to cry now. I knew something was wrong. So, and I told Jeremy if this happened, I wanted him to stay with the baby. So I turned and yelled towards the door. I don't even know if I've ever asked him if he could hear me. But I yelled at the door. I said, you stay with the baby. And I was crying, and Becca was one of our nurses. You'll see her in a clip later of her bringing Caleb in for me to see him for the first time. But she was there on one arm, and as we rolled in, there's all these people with masks on, so all I can see is, their little eyes are poking out, their eyes in there, that's all I can see. So, Dr. Mellon was in there, he was ready. The other C-section wasn't an emergency like mine was. It was routine. And it was Dr. Mellon. They'd called in my surgeon because they didn't know if they could wait for Dr. Mellon to finish. So McKenna was there. The nursing, third-year med student was there. Our pediatrician happened to be there checking on another baby. They asked her to scrub in for Caleb. Very scary. There were 2 nurses, anesthesiologists. There was like 10 people in there. And hi. He gets very concerned when I cry. So, anyway, that panicked me a little bit. There's some people in there. But I had one nurse on each arm, and they were talking me through the contractions and telling me to stay calm. The baby needs as little anxiety as possible, and so he's breathing deep and trying not to cry. And the anesthesiologist is right here, and he's talking to me, and he's putting little things, they're strapping my arms down, and they're putting the probes on, and chest things, heartbeat, and he said this is going to happen really fast. He's like, we're going to take really good care of you and your baby. You just stay calm. And so they were swabbing my stomach, while I was still awake, and they put up, as soon as the shields went up, whatever that's called, the cloth, the screen or whatever it is, he said, are you ready? And all I heard was the chorus of people say, we're ready, and yes, and he put the mask over my mouth, and he said, take a deep breath, and I took as deep a breaths as I could, and world went dark. So, while I was under, no, Ollie, you can't go up there. So while I was under, Jeremy is out in a dark hallway with one light on at the very end of the hallway, about 9:45 at night on a Friday night. and he's all by himself. The door's right there, like my surgical room is right there, my OR. And 8 minutes later, about 10 minutes later, he heard Caleb cry. So he said it was at that moment he actually was able to sit down because he had been pacing the hallway. And a couple minutes later, no, oh, you can't go up there right now. A couple minutes later, a few minutes later, he's not really sure, Caleb came rolling out, going up to the nursery. Didn't have to do any ICU or anything. But he was crying, and good strong cry, and latched on Jeremy's finger, and they went up to the nursery. Turns out they did my entire C-section from the first incision to Caleb being born was 8 minutes. Which they tell me usually takes 20 minutes to a half hour to usually do a C-section. So they got him out fast, which was scary. His APGAR, which is the score that they give babies 1 minute after birth and 5 minutes after birth, 7, 8, 9, or 10 is good. Anything 6 or below is bad. Caleb was a 2. It scored off breathing, you know, if they're moving, their color, their heartbeat, something else. It's 5 things. APGAR stands for. APGAR is actually the name of a woman. Virginia APGAR. I just listened to a Things You Miss in History class about this. And they made the 5 things fit with her last name. So it had been called something else, but he was a 2. The only thing he had was a heartbeat. He wasn't breathing. He was blue. He wasn't moving. He was limp. So they had to resuscitate him. They had to, I can't remember what it's called. They had to intubate him, which they put a hose on his throat into his lungs, and cleaned out all the meconium and everything because he had inhaled it. And they gave him some forced oxygen and started wailing. So it's pretty scary. So I didn't know all this for hours. And it all kind of got pieced together over the course of the next couple weeks, actually. I didn't know how bad I woke up about 45 minutes after I went under. And I said, "Where's my baby?" And they said, he's in the nursery with Dad. And I didn't know till later that my husband was, mom in distress, baby in distress. He had a lot of stress. I can't imagine how helpless that has to feel. I can't even. Yeah, you think so? I can't imagine. I think it's always easier to be the person in the hospital than the person supporting the person in the hospital. It's always easier to be the person that's sick because you're busy. You know what I mean? You're just doing what you have to do. But to be the support person, it's scary, and I can't imagine how nervous he was. And I don't know if he was scared. I'm sure he was. I was. And so I said, "Can I see my husband?" So he came down and we took a selfie. I'm pretty sleepy, pretty groggy. They took me back up. I always say upstairs. The only other place I've had surgery was a bigger hospital in Minnesota, and the ORs were downstairs. The rooms were upstairs. It's all one level, so no matter what I say. And went back to my room, and I want to say it was a little before midnight when I got to see Caleb for the first time. And there's a video that I'm going to put in here.
Here he comes.
Here he comes. It's the birthday boy. There's your mama.
Yeah.
She's like, all right.
Hi, Caleb.
Put me under the heat lamp. He does have a diaper on, so you won't get pooped on.
He's a boy.
So that was the first time I got to see my baby. And I think the thing for me that was hardest I had all these grand plans of a natural birth, and that's fine. The fact I had to have a C-section, I've made my peace with that. That is not why, and I figured, it took me a long time, it took me months, literally months, to figure out why I was so upset about my birth plan going so sideways. One is the fact that he almost isn't here. If they had let that progress too much longer, he may not have made it. And someone said 25 years ago he probably wouldn't have made it. The doctor said that. So thank God for the technology this day and age. But I think the thing that made me the most upset was I had all these grand plans of him being born and skin to skin and holding my baby and that bonding right after he was born. 8 months later. So, when they brought him in, I was pretty happy my baby was alive. His recovery APGAR was very good. So he went from a 2 at 1 minute to an 8 at 5 minutes, which is awesome. So because his recovery was so good, one of the things we asked when we saw the surgeon the next day was, what are the long-term effects? And he said with a recovery APGAR like that, they don't see any long-term effects from having a traumatic birth at all. So that's fantastic. He is a very happy boy. He is munching on blueberry puffs. See? I was in the hospital Friday night. We went home on Monday. He lost a lot of weight. We had a really hard time breastfeeding. Breastfeeding was very hard. It was very hard. I was so bound and determined for something to go my way that I was not going to give up. We went back to the hospital on Wednesday. I thought we were doing well. He lost more weight. He lost 2 more ounces. We were right at the 10% mark, 9.9. And one of the, they're huge on breastfeeding at my hospital, which was good because I wanted to do that. But my lactation consultant said, have you tried laying on your side? I'm like, no, I haven't even slept laying down because I had a C-section and it hurts. And she said, let's try to lay down. So she had pillows behind me and underneath my legs and behind my back, and we laid down. So he laid on the bed next to me, and he latched, and he drank 3 ounces because we weighed him before and after. And I cried. I did a lot of crying the first few weeks, maybe 6 weeks. I couldn't even tell you now. I was so in love with that little face, and it was so scary that we almost didn't have him. And yeah, he's pretty phenomenal. So we came home. We got the weight gain coming back. They like to have him back to birth weight by 2 weeks. It took us 3.5. I started going to a mother's milk group. It's a breastfeeding support group at the hospital. I've made a lot of friends there. We have baby group every month. Kind of jumping ahead of myself, but the support group has really helped us breastfeed successfully. I almost quit at 6 weeks. He wasn't latching correctly. I didn't know that, and I was so sore that it was like cut with razor blades when he would feed. And there's actually a couple days that I was pumping and giving him a bottle because I couldn't take it. It hurt so bad. We introduced a bottle at 4 weeks. My mom was here. She came out. She flew out Saturday morning. Heather and Paul, Highland Handmaids, drove down to Boston and got her. Drove all the way to Boston, drove her all the way back up. She stayed with us till Tuesday. And yeah, it was pretty fantastic. So she took care of the cats for us, and she stayed here at the house, and Jeremy stayed with me at the hospital. And I can't thank Heather and Paul enough for... I probably didn't properly thank them at the time. Oh, he's very excited. But, what'd you do? Hold on. Here. He wanted the door. So, the first couple months were a whirlwind. Jeremy was home. Dada was home for the first 6 weeks. It was fantastic. He took very good care of me and Caleb. He got up with me in the night, helped, change his diaper, helped make sure he was feeding. Did the dishes, cooked for me. I'm so lucky that he wanted to be such a big part of that, and that he wanted to be here for the first 6 weeks. It was really fantastic. So we got him taking a bottle and just the pictures. You'll see all the pictures as we go along, but it was really amazing, and we've had some more adventures since. Weight gain's been good. He's a very long and skinny boy. He's like my younger brother. I can't say little because he's 6'4". He's 85 percentile for length, and he's 15 percentile for weight. And he's consistent. He's just a long, skinny little boy. He's 28 inches long already at 7 months, and most babies at 7 months are like 26 and a half. So he's a long, lean little bugger. He's into 9-month and 1-year-old clothing already. A lot of the 9-month clothes are too short, so he wears 12-month clothes, but they're huge around, but they're perfect length. So he's been quite the amazing baby.
Good night all. Sleep tight.